Hello, welcome. Welcome to Perima Dynamic Huddles today. We're a little bit early, but thank you for joining us on time. And we're looking forward to getting started at 4 p.m. In the meantime, if you haven't done this before, we really welcome you to our huddles, which happens every Monday from 4 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. We love to know who you are. So if you could make use of either the chat function to tell us about your name and where you're from, or for those who are a little bit more, agile with Zoom, if you can click on your name and rename yourself to be your first name, comma, as well as where you are, that would be great. So for example, I would be Stacy, comma, Hong Kong, or if you want to get more creative, Stacy, comma, just after a typhoon in Hong Kong. So feel free to rename yourself or type in the chat. We'd love to know who you are as we get started and wait for the rest to join us. So if you don't know how to rename, just find your name on your Zoom profile, click on it, and there should be a rename function over there. So hello, I see some people from the Philippines. I see some people from Haiyan, from Bangkok, I guess. I see a lot from sunny Singapore. There is Hong Kong as well joining us. There is Philippines, there is India, there is Japan, there is China. Welcome. Just a few sessions more, just a few minutes more before we officially start. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. As we wait for more people to join us, our panelists are already waiting and ready to go. But we would love to know who you are and where you're coming from. So if you can, just type on the chat, either type on the chat your name and where you're from, or if you would like, also rename yourself in Zoom and tell us who you are, your first name and where you're from. So we love to know who you are as well. So if you would like, please turn on your video cam so we can see. We would really encourage you to ask questions through the chat function. Please make sure that you type it to everyone so we can all see it. And if you just want to be a silent supporter, you can also react on Zoom with either a thumbs up or a clap of your hands to react. We are exactly 4 o'clock and we are about 34 people in the room. I see a lot of I see a lot of our familiar risk managers. So welcome everyone. We're just a few more minutes before we get started. I really thank everyone for being on time and dedicating your time this afternoon to come for this. Hi Ben. Hi Bien. Hi Yogesh. Hello. So just to let you all know, the session will be, we will be recording this session. However, the slides will not be shared. So do pay attention, and also we will also be opening the floor for questions later. But do feel free to keep typing in as we go along. I'm really excited to, obviously welcome our partner, FM Global, to this session. We have been a long partner ever since Perima started, and this is something that we're very excited to be bringing to you today. We will be talking about how do you respond, especially during this, this emerging time, about managing cyber risk during a disruption. So we will, I have seen some glimpse of the slides, and I know that we have an exciting and very relatable session coming up. So without stopping us, and I'm sure there's going to be a tight agenda, I'll pass it on to our moderator for today, also a Perima board member representing Singapore, a good friend, Max. So Max is the enterprise risk manager for APAC Rolls-Royce. We just had a joke just now. He's also been nominated key personnel, so that's why he gets to go back to the office very soon. But that's not his office right now. That is his man cave currently. And so Max, take us away, please.
Thanks so much, Stacey. Yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Max Davis. I'm Enterprise Risk Manager, Asia Pacific for Rolls-Royce. I'm looking forward to today's session because I've had a lot of discussions about cyber risk during this pandemic, actually. So I think this is actually a really good topic to cover right now. I'm delighted to introduce our two speakers today, or our two panel members, Pankaj Tereja, who is a cyber consultant for the APAC division for FM Global. He's actually based here in Singapore as well. He spent most of his time in IT and cybersecurity, assisting organizations protecting their critical information, their assets, and also preventing loss by providing recommendations on IT security, design, controls, as well as their governance. Our second speaker today is going to be Christian Walsh, who is also at FM Global as a senior account engineer, based over in Melbourne. He started out as a field engineer and is now account engineer supporting FM Global Australia's operations, and is one of their cyber champions, and is working closely with the client service team along with Pankaj as a cybersecurity consultant. If you've got questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to come to them at the end of the presentation. But don't worry, we will come back to them. Please feel free to jump in with whatever questions you have. Otherwise, we're just going to get ones from me, which are probably not what you're thinking. So please add in what you've got. Also take some time to have a look at the exciting backgrounds for our two speakers, because they've chosen some pretty cool ones today. And so I'll let you get us kicked off, Pankaj.
Thank you, Max. And let me share my slides here. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to attend today's session. Hope it will be time well spent for you. And let me begin it with a question. And that question is, how many cyber attacks that takes place every day in the world? Would you like to guess it? I think we have given some hints to you, so go ahead and select whatever you feel is the right answer here. So, all right, so 71% said million and plus. Excellent, wow. So I would say there is no right or wrong answer here, but approximately the 71% people who said million and over, excellent. That's absolutely the right answer if we are talking in today's context. Then most of the people that asked me, how does millions of attacks takes place every day? I'm sure you're curious as well. Well, the answer is hackers use automated tools, and they use these tools to identify weaknesses in your businesses and then exploit to penetrate inside the business. Cybercrime by 2021, in fact, it's estimated that the cost of cybercrime to individuals and companies by 2021 will reach $6 trillion on an annual basis. And we at FM Global seeing a similar trend, which is the rise of cyber losses. This is not really a surprise, given the global increase in cyber attacks. So then question becomes, what at the risk? Well, data, of course, and that's often what we first think of: cyber, theft of data, destruction of data, and disruption of data. But it doesn't stop there, because there is a means to profit, not just from the data itself, but from the interruption of the business network as well. Why stop there? Hackers would typically disrupt everything and anything they can, including your operational technology and industrial control systems. In case you were in a business of manufacturing, power gen, mining, etc., anything to do with the industrial sector, hackers would try to penetrate in the operational technology. Why? See, if the entire business was disrupted and not just data, it builds up a huge pressure on a business to pay ransom, doesn't it? In certain cases, such attacks even go beyond disrupting a business, which is the physical damage. What else do you expect from a criminal? Well, the point is, if you are connected, your business is at risk one way or the other. So we are an insurance company, and we have been seeing the rise of cyber attack. And like you have seen in the previous this slide as well, that we have seen this curve, a rise in these cyber attacks. And no matter how many cyber attacks we see, there is still a pattern in these attacks. So today I'm going to share with you a story that looks pretty similar to that pattern. So I'm sure you are excited like I am. So what happens on a Monday morning? Michelle starts checking her emails, notices an unexpected invoice, opens the invoice with a confusion. She really thought this invoice has already been paid, but still that invoice landed again on her mailbox. So the moment she opened that invoice, she infected her laptop with a malware. So the first thing that happened after she installed the malware was administrator credentials were stolen, which is the keys of the kingdom. And why does that happen? Imagine a hacker penetrates in any business. They would like to grab the highest possible credentials so that they have a freedom to roam around in a business. And that's often a pattern in any attack that we see, or most of the attacks that we see. And obviously, they will infect the rest of the business with their own speed the moment they have such a higher credential. So it should not be a surprise, but this shuts down the entire business in 90 minutes. And 95% systems were impacted. Unfortunately, they had to close down. There was no other choice, especially when 95% business is impacted. And guess what? It was not all. They received this ransom threat. I will let you read it at your own pace, and then we'll move to our next question. So you can see that these hackers were pretty threatening, and they knew what they were talking about from that email. So the question becomes, imagine you were a decision maker and you are a risk manager. Let's say, imagine, and some of you are our risk managers. If you were in the similar position, what would you do? Would you pay the ransom or do not pay the ransom? Go ahead and select it. We are very interested to know that. All right, so it's a mix of response. 36% said pay the ransom. The other said do not pay the ransom. Well, it's a difficult choice. Let me tell you, the answer is no easy. I have personally been in that discussion. Should we pay the ransom or should we not pay the ransom? But before you make that decision, you have to understand one thing. Paying ransom is no contractual obligation with the hacker to return you the key. Guess what? They have remotely hacked your business, for example, and they lost the key or they corrupted the key they used originally to encrypt it. This has happened before. Even if you pay the ransom, they may not be in the ability to provide you your keys back, and hence you may not be able to bring up your business, but you would have lost your money. And that's why I said it's a very difficult decision to make. In this case, the moment hacker penetrated in the business, it was a complete disaster. They couldn't produce, they had no order processing capability, no shipping, no finance operations, no client servicing. The worst part, no call center. Can you imagine when your supply chain clients can't really get to you, what happens then? Basically, they will feel frustrated. Anybody who has paid the money to the business can't get to the business and they can't utilize, their orders are pending or whatever the case may be. If business is down, it develops frustration. And when frustration develops, what happens in 21st century, that frustration comes back to social media and negative news trends. That's how we live today. Because these guys have decided that they're not going to pay the ransom, fair, it's a business decision, and they started recovering the business. The impact was they lost millions of dollars in a week. And these financial losses may include everything that you see or beyond it. It could be cost to repair your systems, cost to restore data, and more importantly, business interruption. If you can't produce, you can't service your client, you are losing dollars every day as a business. And these dollars are huge amount. And in certain cases, there has been resulting damages. What does that mean is, let's say you had an operational technology, you had a plant, a hacker got inside, and this is a real life example as well. So the hacker captured a DCS, they captured the safety system, they tried to create an overpressure event. With that, they could really blast something in the plant, could cause a fire or overspeed a turbine in the plant. That can be dangerous. And this is not hypothetical. I'm not trying to scare anybody here, but this is something which has happened. So that's why it is important to understand these risks. Well, they were financial losses. Think about non-financial losses. Once you basically you are in a situation where the business is lost, you cannot basically be contacted. The first thing that happens is you lose the client's confidence. I'm sure we have all been in that situation where you realize that the company you are talking to has been hacked before. We are scared to share our data, or we are fearful in transacting with these businesses again. And these are non-financial losses. On top, losing business reputation is no joke, is really no joke. So you may lose the business reputation, you may lose the client's confidence. But before we even move ahead, I think let's talk about, so you have answered that poll. So it's difficult to predict how long a client will take to respond back to the business with the same confidence they had before the hack is very difficult to predict. And people who said 6 months and 2 years, I'm sure they might have some plans to win their confidence back, or whatever the case may be. But in general, it is difficult to win a client's confidence. And these are long-lasting damages, pretty much irreparable. And some of them can't be insured. So that's where the importance of risk assessment and risk mitigation happens. So oftentimes we hear what industries are impacted. And by the way, the simple answer is, if your business is connected, you are at a risk, no matter which industry you are in. You can be a retailer, a utility company, bank, of course, are at higher risk, even manufacturers, government agencies, and all of them that you see on your screen has been hacked. This has already been in news. So right now, if you ask me the question, no one is immune. And that's why perhaps one of the reasons that you're attending this session today, that what do I do about it? In the world of FM Global, we believe the majority of loss is preventable. Cyber is no different if you understand the risk. And if you understand, once you understand the risk, you can then apply the principles of loss prevention. I think let's look through an example here. If we look through the lens of a property, right? In this case, fire, we feel good talking about fire. Why? Because we understand the hazard. We know that prompt fire detection is beneficial, don't we? We know that properties need to have adequate protection in place for what's valuable to the continuity of business. And when that fire event does happen, it is essential that you are prepared to respond quickly and efficiently. Now let's look through the lens of cyber. It is not different either. Yes, the hazard wears a hooded sweatshirt, but with the same potential impact of physical damage and business interruption. We need to detect the hacker like we detected a fire, which is the hazard in case of cyber, as early as possible. Once detected, we must protect our business from that threat actor to damage it any further. And we have to be prepared to respond and recover from the attack. If losses can be prevented, then I'm sure you have a question in your mind saying, tell me if the example you showed could have been prevented. And this is what happened. So in the scenario, the loss scenario that I'm sharing with you today, Michelle was tricked to download an attachment, correct? And then what happened? She infected her laptop with a malware. And the third thing was hackers stole administrative credentials, which is the keys of kingdom. Finally, the malware was spread and the business was shut down. And they were asked for a ransom, either to pay the ransom or suffer the losses. The bigger question is, could this be prevented? Let's see. So let's say Michelle was tricked to download an attachment. If she was well trained, she would have at least given a pause to that email and thought, hang on a minute, I have already paid this invoice. Would this be a targeted attack or a phishing attack, spear phishing attack in this case? Let me ask my IT personnel or security operations or whosoever can look into that email and provide a legitimate answer. She didn't do it. It's fine. We all do make mistakes, and that's pretty normal. So if, let's say, if any of us make that mistake and cause our business millions of dollars in losses in a week, there should be something else that should be protecting from our mistakes as well, which is the endpoint security in this case. Let's say the hacker really wanted to plant a malware on someone's laptop. In this case was Michelle. There should have been a proper malware protection endpoint security available on the laptop. Why? Because you want to stop that spread right there. Not just a normal virus scanner, a proper malware protection solution. But it was missing in this case as well. The next thing, obviously, hacker would like to have the administrative credential. We all know the passwords are the weakest form of protection, don't we? So there was no multi-factor authentication in this case. If the multi-factor authentication existed in this business, hacker would have stopped here and would have not been able to spread any further and cause millions of dollars of losses. Finally, the malware spreads. If a malware can spread in 90 minutes in a business, as a consultant, it just tells me one thing, that even the network layer was not very well protected, and hence the malware spread like a fire. Hackers had the administrative credentials, and they could just spread it the way they wanted to. So you can see the just number of things that didn't even exist in the business. And this is just a sample. There could be n number of combinations when you assess a risk in your business. It could come back completely with a different result. But let me first answer this. Could this be prevented? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. If these weaknesses were identified prior to the attack. Loss prevention is all about knowing your risk, which means performing the risk assessments, determining the weaknesses, and then not only understanding your weaknesses, but fixing those weaknesses as well so that you can take an informed decisions and prevent losses. So we, FM Global, we have our own framework. We do assess quite a lot of risk for our clients, and we have our own approach. So what I'm gonna do today is hand over to Christian, who's gonna tell you and give you some tips on how to assess a risk in what you see on your screen right now. Christian?
Thanks, Pankaj. As you said earlier, nobody is immune from cyber attack, but identifying where cyber exposures may lie can prevent businesses becoming victims, like the example that you just went through with Michelle. And managing cyber risk can be done in a variety of ways. To help companies understand their cyber resilience overall, we developed a 360-degree holistic approach to cyber risk assessment. The approach consists of 3 engineering components, as you can see on the screen. They are physical security, information security, and industrial control systems. Combining these components will provide a comprehensive view of an organisation's cyber risk. Physical security is the first line of defence, and it's often a second thought when it comes to cybersecurity. Some of the measures that you should review as part of assessing your physical security risk include: are server and computer rooms locked with only appropriate personnel granted access? Do you have monitoring systems such as CCTV? Who has access to critical business areas like server and computer rooms? What security do you have in place for contractors, visitors, and third parties? And do you have an incident response plan for your sites to follow in case of an incident? The second critical area is assessing your enterprise-wide information security environment. Ensure that you have a security program, appropriate processes, tools, and policies in place to protect your business from cyber threats. Most importantly, the security program must be well governed with top-level management support. Manage your cyber risk not only from external threat actors, but also manage, detect, and mitigate internal human threats to your organisation. You should implement appropriate information security controls like DMZ or demilitarized zone, multi-factor authentication, as Pankaj mentioned, advanced malware protection, and network segmentation, all protecting your business from cyber threats. But even with the best protection in place, you can never be guaranteed you won't fall victim to a cyber attack. So last but not least, make sure you have response and recovery plans to be able to respond to a cyber incident in a timely and organised manner. This will help minimise the time needed to return to business operations like normal. The third and final aspect of the cyber risk assessment is industrial control systems, or ICS. And you can think of ICS as the connection between the digital and physical worlds. This could be anything from a building management system to a complex manufacturing process. For operational efficiency, businesses tend to depend on digital systems to control their physical processes. Hence, it's important to have a resilient ICS infrastructure in place. Although internet connectivity has brought many benefits, it's also led to increased cyber risk and greater potential for extensive physical damage. An ICS assessment should therefore examine risks that could expose critical systems and equipment to malicious actions. Think cyber criminals taking control of physical equipment and machinery. To prevent this, you need to have a strong understanding of your overall systems, connectivity, and interdependencies. Ensure you have sufficient network safeguards and strong firewalls in place. And don't forget, humans are amongst the weakest links, so you must have appropriate training programs in place for your employees. Also, emergency operating procedures should be available to deal with cyber incidents. Be sure to establish roles and responsibilities, including who is responsible for communication inside and outside the company. Which of your vendors are contractually obligated to provide support during the cyber event? In summary, assessing each of the components of the cyber risk assessment will give you a full and comprehensive view of cyber risk resilience. Combining all three aspects of cyber risk will help ensure any organisation is best placed to understand and mitigate its cyber risk. I'll now hand back to Pankaj to summarise and conclude today's session.
All right, so thank you, Christian. I hope you can see the takeaway screen because we have just switched screens in between. Yes? Okay, so as you can see what Christian has mentioned, that you need to assess the cyber risk from three angles: physical security, information security, and then industrial control systems. And these are the key points that the key areas that you should assess in your business, literally. So if you have to take away anything today, just think from this perspective, cyber loss is preventable. I didn't say cyber attacks, but cyber loss is preventable, provided you are committed to understanding the risk and taking the informed decisions so that ultimately you can avoid the financial losses and non-financial losses. And that's about it. So we're going to open this session now today for any questions that you may have, and we can answer.
Thank you very much, Pankaj and Christian. I'm now totally paranoid about opening any emails, even more so than I was before. So thanks for that. Yeah, we've had some questions come in already. I'm just going to start on a real basic one that I think we should all be thinking about, really, which is just around that employee awareness and employee engagement piece. So as an employee, you get a lot of different things sent to you. You know, you need to be aware of compliance, you need to be aware of HR policies and so on and so forth. You know, how do we get employees aware of what they need to know about from a cyber perspective? What kind of tips might you have in terms of getting their engagement and getting them aware of what they should know so they don't open up that suspicious email?
Brilliant. So I think that's a very interesting question. And in fact, most of the businesses do struggle with it because you're talking about thousands of employees. And I've been to an organization which has 300,000 employees. So how do you communicate your security policies when you have such a large employee base? The answer is you basically develop user policies, and the user policies are basically then asked every user, every employee to basically go through it and then understand them. And it's all about communicating it in the way that works for the business. What technique works for one business may not work for the another. So that's where the practical approach and comes into the picture, that where are your employees? How are you going to communicate it? Is this going to be in the form of code of conduct, the ethical code of conduct that you want every employee to read it and make sure they sign it and not end there? And also have regular trainings, posters in kitchens. Like you would enter in an organization, they would say, never share a password right above the sink, or don't do this, don't do that. And that basically comes from a data. If an organization has a particular data and they would like that to be emphasized on individual employees, there are many ways you can do that. And it's a very detailed, thorough discussion. But this is how you would generally communicate your user policies. Hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks.
And just jump in there briefly, Max.
Sure.
Also, another thing that really helps is to share some recent examples of cyber events that have happened. As Pankaj said, you know, there's over 1 million, so you can't share all of them. But giving people regular training is one thing, but helping to keep it at the forefront of their mind is to give them regular examples of where things have gone wrong, so that every time they look at an email that they think might be slightly suspicious, they start to think in their mind, should I be running this through my IT department? This looks a bit fishy. I'm not going to click on that link. I'm going to have a little bit of a think about it before I put my business at risk.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just about the case study piece, there's nothing better than a very close to home case study as well. So if your own organization has had an attack previously, we found that that's been really powerful for people because they know the guy or the lady that's been impacted, you know, the employee that has unfortunately opened up that attachment or has been targeted for a social engineering attack. So we found those have been really powerful for employees to get the message, really, that cyber's important. Just moving on, obviously we are still in this, well, most of us are still in this pandemic phase at the moment, which has actually forced us to work from home, and that's probably going to stick around for quite a while. I guess, should we be concerned that there are any additional risks from that, from people working from home on a more regular basis, or do we think there's not anything additional there we should be worried about?
If you look at what's happening around in the world and news, the hackers now are really, really active. And the reason they are active is their strategy has always been, exploit the fear in us. And they do it in a very different ways. Like, your account is hacked, let's call me, or not call me, call the support, and we will fix your password. So that's a fear tactic. And COVID-19 is a very similar example where people are really worried about COVID. And they have been drafting these phishing emails in which they trigger the fear in you, and then they eventually hack. On top of that, they also understand the employees now, most of us working from home, some of us using our own devices, which are not even well protected based on the corporate security policies. And some of us don't like security so much. So we try to just go away from VPN connection and try to do one thing using this method and that method. And they understand our behavior. And they are literally hacking organizations and taking the advantage of COVID absolutely right now.
So now's a really important time to do some of that employee engagement and make sure that we are being an advocate internally in terms of looking at this as a risk.
Absolutely.
And the other thing to bear in mind there is you've got a lot of people working at home that don't traditionally do that role. So they're communicating a lot without seeing people face to face. A lot of times you'd have people go around and talk to someone in the office if they wanted to talk about something. Now, pretty much everything's being done electronically. So that creates another area for cyber criminals to jump in and try and expose that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And just thinking about what happens when you do have some issues. I mean, a lot of companies now have actually outsourced a lot of their IT activity, especially some of the back end stuff, the servers, the maintenance of that, some of the service provision around IT. How do you make sure that your provider is actually doing the right risk mitigation activities as well? How do you manage that integration? How do you make sure that you got the assurance that they're doing the sort of work they should be doing?
So what happens is basically you need to have your cyber risk managers like you manage any other business risk in the organization. So you need to identify that cyber risk is real risk. Set the right tone within the business. The moment you set a cyber risk tone within the business and enterprise, of course, basically then your supply chain and then everyone else that is part of that ecosystem will have to follow it. You cannot have an approach that, oh, because this is a technology issue, I'm going to hand it over to a third party and let them manage the risk. And if you do that, then you're actually leaving a gap. And this is the discussion we have had it over and over again with our clients as well. You should be dictating the terms of cyber risk based on your risk appetite of your business. The moment you have that settled, you have downstream activities settled, you have a framework to follow, you have the enterprise, the security framework available to you, the policies and practices and everything. When you follow that, then basically all of that gets settled automatically because you have a bigger picture and then you are just dwelling into the smaller parts of it. And technology support is just one of the pieces. Hope that answers it.
I'm not specifically a cyber expert. I do work with our IT security guys a lot, but I guess it's a naive question. Is there like a standard that people should be following to say, look, I want to flow down this cyber risk onto my vendors?
Well, I think the best answer, the question should be, how do I define my security program for the entire enterprise so that everything underneath gets covered? And I think the answer is ISO 27001 framework, the NIST frameworks, and these are industry well-established frameworks that you can use it and modify based on your business and then deploy them and take the benefits of it. And also build the key risk indicators, and so that you actually can watch what's happening in your environment. And KRIs are absolutely like a dashboard in your car. Imagine you were driving a car on a highway, but you can't even see your speedometer. So security programs or any other larger programs are no different. You need to have a program which is like your car that you need to run. And then you also need to have a dashboard like a KRA so that you can really visualize, you can see what's happening. Anything which can be measured, it can be managed. So, I mean, it's you're talking about a giant enterprise, so that's how it should be done.
Yeah. Okay, and I got a very specific question from Steve here, just about the recent attacks that have been successful around social engineering. And he's brought out the example where a C-suite level person out of hours with all the correct formatting has apparently sent an email to the correct person in the hierarchy, triggered a payment to a third party. How do you defend against that sort of attack without laying on too much bureaucracy? And what sort of insurance would an insurance policy without a clear external trigger? Would there be? I can't quite get the end of the question, but anyway, let's just go through. How would you defend against that sort of attack to start with?
Okay, so we are talking about an email compromise where, let me understand the question first. Email compromise where you are tricked to transfer the money to a third party, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens is, first alarm that, and BEC, which is the business email compromise, is becoming a huge pain for the businesses. Hackers have gone literally sophisticated. So they can read your emails, they know really who you're talking to, and they can trick you. How you should not get tricked is basically the best way to recognize if it is real or not. Before you even take any action, look at where the money is you are bound to transfer. If it is an overseas account, just do not believe your emails only. What if your email bank account was compromised using a man-in-the-middle attack? Or there are 1,000 other ways to trick an employee. Make sure before you transfer it, the money to the account, you talk to that person and settle that account number first and then trigger a payment. And basically, there should be a process around it so that you just don't make your own processes when this situation occurs. It has to be a well-thought process for an organization, and everyone should follow in their finance. The second part is insurance. I'm not an underwriter, so I'm sorry, I can't answer that insurance part. I'm a cyber risk consultant.
Yeah, no,
and
no
Christian doesn't have, Christian and me don't have that.
I'm an engineer.
That's no problem.
We can avoid it for you. We can help you avoid it rather than you end up paying for it.
I'll ask some consultant/engineering questions. I guess just to think about that. So in your example, you brought out that this particular attack had taken out lots of different things within the organization. How do you actually go about quantifying that? Because that to me just would seem impossible, because you don't know what the attack is going to hit. You don't know how big it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to proliferate. It's going to be really hard to kind of put, ideally you'd want a number on it that you could say to the organization that this is how big your risk is, or this is how much I want to insure it for. How do you do that?
All right. So I think quantifying a risk that's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So quantifying risk is no joke. Let me just answer that straight away. Why it is no joke is basically, like you have mentioned, it's very difficult to put a number on an incident. If, let's say, malware spreads, what is the loss you're going to have? Tell me the dollars. That's exactly the C-suite wants to hear. And that's fair. But quantifying an attack, to be very honest with you, is very difficult. It's very difficult to come back with the exact numbers. So the best possible way is win-win situation for the C-suite, finance, and everybody is have a business impact analysis done. DIA will give you what is important for you and the numbers. At least, let me tell you an example. Your ERP or customer-facing apps are so important that you can lose $10 million in a day or in a week or a month, whatever that is. That a business impact analysis can give you that figure, and then combine it with the cyber risk.
So basically your regular business continuity activity should actually tell you what the loss is going to be.
No, see, the business continuity is a different exercise in which you basically plan for recovering your business if the event occurs. But business impact analysis takes place first before that even trigger.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, just thinking from our example, we normally do BIA as part of that activity, but yes. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. If you do that as part of that exercise, which is fine, and it's done in some of the ways, that's how it is done. So basically identify what is important to you so that you can spend the dollars appropriately. then you will be able to see at least ROI from that standpoint. And it's a discussion in itself. There is no blanket answer for every business in this case.
Yeah. Speaking about businesses, just want a one-word answer. Which type of business is the one that gets most affected from cyber attacks the most? Which
All.
business type?
All of them.
All. Okay, go with that one.
We see it across the board.
Okay. Right, next one then. So this one is again from Kelvin. You touched on it earlier. Everyone's advocating moving to the cloud as a sort of cure-all for all sorts of business IT and digital ailments. But when those guys can't even secure themselves, what hope is there for the rest of us? What are your thoughts on that?
It's like handing over our problems to someone else, right? I wish that was a solution all the time. In fact, what happens is, benefit of cloud is definitely there. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense for businesses too. Not arguing about that. But when it comes to managing the risk, it's a different science altogether. You have to see this as a business risk, assess the risk, understand what is important to you, how critical it is to you. Once you have those answers, and then you will be able to realize that, does this make sense moving to the cloud? Let's say you are transferring the data to the cloud, which even if gets hacked, has no negative impact on you. Do it now, because you're going to get a lot of benefits. But if this data is blood and life of your enterprise, then make sure you follow risk assessments and loss prevention methodologies to make sure that you do not get into that situation.
Great. And just thinking from an example from my organization, we've got an IT security department, and I think a lot of organizations will. But I guess, when you talk about cyber risk, it's actually quite multidisciplinary in terms of the approach, in terms of the risk assessment, the mitigation, and the incident response. Kind of who should be involved in cyber risk in terms of that whole end-to-end process?
I would say it is a very much top-down approach. So if your leadership is on board, you're going to have a lot of success in building a secured environment. And that's the key thing to take away here. Who should be involved? In addition to leadership, I can tell you risk managers. The enterprise risk managers basically can connect the dots, which is the business issue and the technology, which then you may have to involve CISO and his team underneath, or anybody who has the ownership of security in the organization if you do not have a CISO in the business. So ERM, leadership, as well as technology team, form a group, you will get quite a lot of success.
I think that's a great place to, end this discussion. So I think risk managers need to start stepping up and start managing these cyber risks. We shouldn't open up any suspicious emails, and basically whichever organization you're in, whichever business, you're going to be attacked at some point by the million or so attacks per day. So thanks very much to Christian and Pankaj, and I'm going to head back to Stacey.
Thank you very much. It was a great session. Thank you so much for your time, guys. As well as Max for you to moderate as well. I mean, we used to say in Parima, I think there used to be a board member in Parima that used to say, if you didn't have someone in your organization whose job is in danger, if there is an attack or a cyber attack, then you are not taking cyber risk seriously. So, that's quite a good way to think about it. So thank you very much. And yes, we have come to the end of the session, and I like to be able to, give a round of applause to everyone who's here today. So we like to close the session by also asking everyone for a poll. If you can just give us your feedback on how do you find today, that would be great. Also, as you are giving feedback, what we also want to be advocating is the next session that we do have with FM Global, which is called Revising Your BCP. That is scheduled for July 13. If you do like what you're hearing, you want to keep continuing this, do sign up for this session. Parima Dynamic Huddles happen every single week. I think the next one is coming up this Wednesday as well. There are many more that's coming up on a weekly basis, including things like this Wednesday will be on macroeconomics with Zurich. There would be next week's on risk financing. We do have a training workshop coming up, and there's also well-being and intangibles. So please feel free to sign up according to your interests. And we look forward to hearing and having everyone back again. And just to close off, to just tell everyone have a good and safe week ahead, and stay safe. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye.